This drawing is not going to be perfect. I mean, I know that no drawing I make, no piece of art individually is ever going to be perfect. And we could spend a lot of time talking about and philosophizing about what perfect looks like when it comes to art. But I wonder if all of that, by its very nature, is simply a waste of time. What good does it do us, though, to think about, to contemplate the fact that our art cannot be perfect? I think for some people, it makes it harder. I think that it makes it a little bit more difficult because with so many things in life, there is a state of perfection, or at least we as a society have determined that there is. You can get 100% on a paper, right? 100% on a test. You could pass your driver's exam with 100%. You could have a flawless record in certain areas of your life. But when it comes to anything that is skill-based, can you have a perfect basketball game? I mean, you could have a perfect score. You could make every shot. You could make every pass. But does that mean that the game itself, the way that you played it, was perfect? I think the answer is obviously no. But yet there are so many areas in our life where perfection is, at least from all outward perspectives, attainable. And I think in reality it probably never is. It's just the systems that we've created. If you take out all of our modern educational system, if you take out all of our spreadsheets, you go back to things that our ancestors did from the dawn of time. Can you build the perfect boat? Can you make the perfect meal? Can you build the perfect fire? Can you create the perfect home? Can you have a perfect marriage, a perfect friendship? Well, no, of course not, because it's an asymptote. It's always one of those things that as you get closer to perfection, it's so much harder to get that next 1%, that next 0.1%. And yet we strive for this. We strive for that perfection. So I'm starting this drawing, this sketchbook session, telling myself right off the bat, telling you who are listening and maybe who are working on your own piece of art right now, it's not going to be perfect. And the next thing to do with that is you and I both to understand and to embrace the fact that that's fine. That's the nature of things. That's okay. Because if you are trailing after perfection, even unconsciously or subconsciously, it is only going to diminish the joy that you get out of the thing. And the joy allows you to stick to the thing for an incredibly long amount of time. Well, this drawing comes from one of the Discord server's weekly prompts. This one was Wind Rider. The character actually had a name. It's just one of those things that I come up with on a weekly basis that gives us something to work on. I'm not sure why this is the one that I chose, but it was interesting to me, and I decided I'm going to play around with it in a kind of children's book, cartoony aspect. I have no idea what this character is riding. I don't know if it's a little boy or girl or what. I just kind of started drawing and didn't have a whole lot in the way of expectations, which I've found recently allows me to have more fun with my drawings. I don't know that they turn out better. I hesitated there for a second because I'm chewing on that. I have a tendency with these videos not to script everything because I find that there's a lot more authenticity amongst the ums and buts and stalls as I try to figure out what I actually think. If I do get to a point, just as an aside, where I don't know what to say, I will just kind of keep the microphone going and then I edit that out later, the big gap. And sometimes there are 20 or 30-second gaps as I process something. If I ever do a live stream of some kind, it'll be much longer form, probably 45 minutes to an hour per session. And you will probably get these 20 and 30-second chunks of me chewing on things, especially if people are asking questions. And by the way, if you have any questions, anything that you would ask if this was live, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I still check every single comment that I get, and I try to reply to all of them. I don't always get there, but this is a Wind Rider. And so I decided I was going to have them on some kind of large condor-like beast. Obviously it has multiple eyes because I'm making it and eyes make it better. And we've got these pretty simple clouds. I struggle with clouds. In a drawing like this, they're really simple forms and they just kind of need to communicate what they are. But they're still a struggle for me. I focused on them individually for different periods of time over the last 5 years. And I feel like every time I do, I get a little bit better, but they're still just hard. They're just a difficult thing for me. I found a lot more success working with them recently and thinking about clouds, rocks, and tree canopies in a similar vein as these kind of odd amorphous things that are all three-dimensional in their own way. And clouds are a lot like the canopy of a tree because you can actually get a view of the underside of it where you can see the shadows on the underside. Rocks, you obviously don't get that, but you can get a lot of soft, well-worn rocks in river valleys that look a lot like clouds. It's one of those things for me. It's been really hard. I've found a lot of things that other people would find more difficult. Weird, sinewy things and jaws and teeth and eyes. Those have been easy for me to learn over the years. But clouds, those dang clouds, they're so soft and fluffy like cotton candy, and it's so hard. They're easier when it comes to painting, harder when it comes to drawing. But these weekly prompts are a fun thing to engage in because the goal with them is to finish a thing. And because that's the goal, I don't find myself slipping into this idea that the drawing needs to be something beyond that it needs to be more like what I mentioned earlier, like a perfect execution of a thing. The goal is just to have a thing that's kind of cute or funny or goofy. And that's pretty easily attainable for me in half an hour, 2 hours on some of the bigger ones. So for something like this, it's pretty low stress. I can just kind of sit down and work on it. And I find that anything that I can do to lean away from perfectionistic tendencies, to lean away from feeling like my art is less than, it's not good enough, is always going to do better for me. But what about you? What do you struggle with when it comes to your perfectionistic tendencies, with the overindulgence in the idea that your art needs to be better than it is right now? This isn't something that you need to reply to. This is just something that I think is beneficial to chew on and to think about sometimes. What kinds of art do you do that bring you satisfaction and joy? What kinds of art do you do that help you progress, that help you increase your skills? Are they the same? Are they different? What kind of things do you have to study for class or for your own personal pursuits, or maybe for your profession? How do those affect you? And try to think about which of those areas you are putting time into and it's good for you, and which of those areas you're putting time into because you think you should, because you always have, because it's easier, because it's low stress. And just try to chew on those things and think about them. I find for me, every once in a while, it's good to write all these things down. As silly as it might sound, I had at one point 2 lists on the whiteboard in my studio space. And one list was like the things that I think I need to work on, the skills that I think I need to have as an artist. And the other was a list of things that I want to be able to do, things I want to be able to draw. On that second list were things like robots and dragons and dinosaurs and characters. And on the other list was like anatomy, figure, composition, things that you would think of learning in an art class or art school. But it was interesting to see the dichotomy between those two, because I, for so much of my artistic life, have focused on the things that I thought I should do and not on the things that I wanted to do. But you might have noticed immediately that there are connection points between those things, right? If I'm focusing on just figural drawing, like that's pretty boring for me. But if I'm working on character drawing, designing characters, and in that study, in that pursuit, I am also working on understanding anatomy and figures, I'm gonna stick to it a heck of a lot longer. If I'm working on understanding animal anatomy, and I'm building monsters and creatures and Lovecraftian horrors and dragons and dinosaurs out of it, I'm going to stick to it because I like the end result. I'm enjoying the process because I like what's coming out on the other end. And this is something that I think I can only do when I actually lay out all the pieces. And so I would encourage you, if you lean perfectionistically, if you feel like your art isn't doing what you want it to, if you feel like there's no hope of forward progress, that you haven't progressed at all in the last couple years or weeks or months or whatever your time frame is, I would really encourage you to sit down, just take a big sheet of paper or even just a piece of printer paper and start listing these things out. List out the things that you want to get better at, and then list out the things that you really enjoy working on. Like if you had all your skills in a video game and you could just level them up, what would you draw? What would you paint? What would you make the next day? For me, it would be illustrating all these things for the graphic novel that I want to work on, for the children's book, for the fantasy novel that I'm working on. I would want to illustrate those things as accurately as possible. And so, in order to do that, I have to focus on drawing those kinds of things. And guess what? I enjoy drawing those things more. And at the end of the day, that just means that I draw more. It means I paint more. It means I keep creating things, which means that my skills keep progressing. And every day that I work, I get a little bit closer to those crazy end goals that I've held on to for decades. And so I would encourage you to do the same, because the more of us that head towards those things, the crazier this world gets and the cooler things that we are going to see as we reach into the depths of adulthood. Well, as always, thanks for listening. I appreciate the time. If you are looking to join an artistic community, we have a Discord server attached to this channel, and there's a description down below. Thank you to Patron Who, What, Where, When for your continued support, and all my other patrons on my Patreon. If you're interested in helping me out here at the channel and supporting me, you can check out the Patreon link below. It also gives you access to some things ahead of time, like outlines and scripts for the videos, and the ability to vote on polls for what's going to come up in the next couple weeks. Well, have a good one, y'all. See you soon.